Men of Reddit who proposed and she said no. What happened afterwards with your life? She said yes on the second proposal and now we're divorced. Very first girlfriend ever. Started dating at 17. After 6 years of dating I proposed. She said, "No, I'm sorry." I asked why. She said, "I've been thinking about this for a while but didn't talk to you about it. I found someone else." Then she broke up with me right then and there. I asked if she cheated and she said no. We're just friends right now. But he makes me happy when I'm with him and you just don't. You used to. But not anymore. I tried sabotaging their relationship when I found him begging her for nudes, tattled to her ultra-Christian parents that he was twice her age, which he is, and did everything I could to be the insane one. Finally realized what I was doing, apologized, promised to never talk to her or her family ever again. I sold the ring and used the money to buy a guitar and a boatload of weed and spiraled out of control for 3 years. Flunked all my classes, got a dead-end job at a construction gig, slowly descended into borderline alcoholism. Couldn't leave the house or go to work or do my job without being high. Gained a ton of weight, let myself go. Finally contemplated suicide, planned it out with a 20-page instruction manual on how to make it painless, not screw it up, and not hurt anyone in the process. Never went through with it because I kept getting scared and spending my suicide fund on weed and alcohol. Finally broke down and told my parents all of this, asked for help. Spent another year in a rehab program with a therapist. Got out and have been clean for 3 years by this September, and still wake up at 3 a.m. feeling sick every couple of months for the way I treated her after having spent 6 years telling her that I loved her. But that's all over now, and all I can do is learn from it, promise to be better, and keep going. So now I'm turning 29 in a week, still living at home with parents, and constantly battling self-loathing and anxiety while working a job for $9 an hour. But I pay my parents $300 a month to stay with them, and I'm going back to school. Taking the minimum number of credit hours per semester since I'm paying for it out of pocket, and I work full-time, and overtime when I can get it. But slowly dragged my GPA from a 1.28 to a 2.64 and can start getting help next semester instead of paying for all of it out of pocket. Now, I also lost a ton of weight during the pandemic and weigh just 189. Now, in rehab I dropped to 220, but I was closer to 245 to 250 before that. Safe to say I won't be worth dating for a long time, but maybe when I get my degree under my belt and finish growing and learning I can get a self-sustaining job, I can move out and truly start over. We were living together. I asked, she said, "No, I love you but I need to think about it. I don't think I'm ready yet. Can you give me some time and ask later?" A few months go by. I ask again, same response. A few more months, same deal. A couple more weeks and then she says, "Hey, what do you think of us getting married?" I replied, "That's an excellent idea. Why didn't I think of that? Our 39th anniversary is next month." She said yes as I had a special occasion planned, one of those observation wheels, and I proposed at the very top. And we were in our way to a family event, and I had a ring made and everything. Then a few days later she said no. Everything fell apart. I was distraught. We continued dating for a while, but it was long distance other side of the world. When I visited it would be super awkward. Eventually dad kicked me out. Was flying standby and was stuck in an airport for 4 days. Took me years to recover. Now I am happily married and am glad it never worked out. I was not in a good place when I met her, and her family were super controlling. It would never have worked. The woman I married is super cool and is my best friend. Turned out better than expected. She had said she wasn't really a fan of marriage, so I thought proposing non-marriage might be well received, and I wanted us to be together for the rest of our lives. So I asked her not to marry me. She said no. We have been married for 10 years. Dated a woman for over 2 years and popped the question. First time she said, "I don't know." A couple months later I asked her again. She said maybe. I was pretty bent out of shape. But then I found out she was sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet there really. We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me that I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and got married in 1991. We are still married, have 3 children, and are both still very much in love. It was really bad for a while. Then it was really bad. Then it became really bad. Then it became bad. Then it was just blah. Then it was neutral. Then things started to get better. They continued to get better by me learning to be happy and me doing me things. I eventually found someone else, and things have been getting better for 20 years now. I asked her right out of high school, but she wasn't ready. We stayed together, went to college at the same school, spent the first year in separate dorms, then moved in together. Got married a few years later. Our 20th is coming up. She had cancer. I said we should get married because I had full medical coverage from my work. She said no, and over time we grew apart. Haven't talked to her in 15 years, don't know if she died. I know a couple who did just that. He proposed in order to give her citizenship and health insurance so she could remain here and get cancer treatment she desperately needed. They stayed married for about 15 years and he even adopted her son, but they never lived together or were romantically involved. Years later, they divorced when he met the woman of his dreams and wanted to get married. They are all very close friends, with no drama. She lived and is a university professor now. He is in another state with the woman of his dreams. My mother turned my father down, but didn't outright break up with him. She just wasn't sure about the marriage idea. She valued her independence and was nervous about commitment. No hard feelings though. He called up the next day when she'd had more time to think about it, and she said yes after all. They celebrated 32 years of marriage last month. Just the fact that they could say those things to each other and still be respectful and friendly, loving, that's the key there. I was the person who said no. We had only known each other for 3 months and he was smitten. I was more cautious. I said no, I like you but it's way too soon. He asked when would be enough time. I said maybe a year. He proposed again at midnight. 1 year after we first met, I said yes, and we have been together 8 years now. This is the story of my parents. My dad asked my mom to marry him several times. She said no several times. One day my dad asked my mom to marry him yet again. She said yes. He freaked out and left her apartment and dumped her. 3 weeks later he hated his life without her and begged her to take him back and marry him. They were married 9 months later for 16 years until my mom passed from cancer. They loved each other so much and had such a deep appreciation for each other. That was 25 years ago. My dad has not remarried. No one will ever come close to my mama. My mom rejected my father the first 2 times, lol. There was no real hard feelings between them. I guess my mother was just not ready for marriage yet. She ended up proposing to him. My grandmother and mother sewed a suit for their dog to wear and attached a sign around his neck with a ring that read, "Will you marry me?" Then she sent the dog out into the kitchen to beg for scraps while my father was preparing dinner. The next thing she heard was a very concerned voice shouting, "Honey, the dog is asking me to marry him." Cue absolute hysterics. My dad said yes to the proposal. My human dad and my human mom are still married 2 decades later. The fact that I even had to clarify this is severely disappointing. My dad proposed to a woman who said no. My dad was a violent alcoholic, and she said she couldn't be with him unless he got clean. Took him a little while, but he did it. He wound up meeting my mom through a matchmaker, and they'd been married 25 years. If that woman never said no to him, he never would have gotten clean. It was the lowest point in his life. But it all brought him to my mom, who makes him happier than ever. My mom actually said no to my dad's proposal when they were younger. Not because they weren't in love, but because she wasn't sure if it was something she actually wanted to do, rather than something that society expected of her or whatever. They still stayed together and had kids, hence why you're reading this now. And then when my dad was terminally ill a few years ago, my mom plucked up the courage and asked him. Just to get her back after all those years, he said no before taking her up on the offer a few days later. He died a happy man. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.